She chose you. I chose freedom.
The hospital smelled like disinfectant and broken dreams, which seemed fitting since I was watching mine crumble in real time. My wife Elise sat beside me in the emergency room waiting area, mascara streaking down her cheeks like war paint, clutching her phone like it was a lifeline to salvation. "Nick, please, you have to understand," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Brent was in an accident. I had to come." I stared at the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, counting the dead flies trapped inside the plastic covers. Seemed like a metaphor for something, but I was too tired to figure out what. "Your ex-boyfriend from college calls you at midnight and you drop everything to rush here," I said, my voice flat as a tire on gravel. "Yeah, that's totally normal married behavior. It's not like that. Save it." I leaned back in the uncomfortable plastic chair. "I'm just the Uber driver tonight, apparently." 20 minutes later, a nurse called out, "Brent Kincaid's family?" Elise shot up like she'd been electrocuted. I followed, curious to see what kind of life-threatening emergency required my wife's immediate attention at 12:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. We found Brent in bed 3, looking perfectly healthy, except for a ridiculous bandage wrapped around his head like a turban. He was conscious, alert, and flexing his biceps for the nurse taking his vitals. "Oh my God, Brent!" Elise rushed to his side, grabbing his hand. "Are you okay? What happened?" "Hair transplant procedure went wrong," he said, wincing dramatically. "The clinic botched it. I'm probably going to sue." I blinked slowly. Hair transplant. Emergency hair transplant at midnight. "You dragged me out of bed for cosmetic surgery complications?" I asked. Elise shot me a look that could have melted steel. "Nick, please." He was scared and alone. "He's 42 years old," I said, "and apparently has your number memorized for medical emergencies involving his hairline." Brent finally noticed me standing there. "Oh, hey, Nick. Thanks for bringing her." "Don't mention it," I said. "Really, don't." I watched my wife fuss over this gym rat moron with his perfectly sculpted abs and his botched hair plugs, and something cold settled in my chest. Not anger. Anger was hot and messy. This was different. This was clarity. "I'm going home," I announced. "Nick, wait," Elise started. "Take your time," I said. "Really, take all the time you need." I walked out of that hospital and drove home to our split-level house on Maple Street, the one we'd bought 3 years ago when we still pretended to be happy. I went straight to our bedroom and started packing. Shirts, jeans, work boots, my toolbox from the basement. Everything that mattered to me fit in 2 duffel bags, which should have been depressing, but felt liberating instead. I left a note on the kitchen counter. "Don't worry about me. You've got Brent to take care of now. I'll be at the shop." Then I drove to Harlan's Auto Repair, the business I'd built from nothing over the past 8 years. Ray Martinez was there, working late on a transmission rebuild. Ray was my right-hand man, an ex-con who'd done 3 years for armed robbery and came out determined to go straight. He was better with engines than anyone I'd ever met and loyal as a guard dog. "Boss?" Ray looked up from the engine bay, wiping grease off his hands. "What are you doing here this late?" "Moving in temporarily," I said, dropping my bags on the office floor. "Got a couch I can crash on?" Ray didn't ask questions. That was one of the things I liked about him. "Sure thing. Want a beer?" "Make it 2. We sat in the garage bay, drinking Budweiser and listening to the radio play classic rock. I told Ray about the hospital, about Brent, about the whole pathetic situation. "So your wife's cheating," Ray said matter-of-factly. "Probably." "What are you going to do about it?" I finished my beer and crushed the can. "I'm going to find out exactly what I'm dealing with, then I'm going to handle it." "Need help?" "I might," Ray nodded. "Just say the word." My phone buzzed. Text message from Elise. "Where are you? We need to talk." Then another. "Nick, please come home." Then another. "I can explain everything." By morning, she'd sent 167 messages. I read every single one, watching her desperation escalate from confusion to anger to panic to bargaining. It was like watching someone drown in slow motion. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I called Detective Mike Carver, a private investigator I'd met through Ray's parole officer. Carver was a gruff ex-cop who'd been forced into early retirement after a corruption scandal that wasn't his fault. He ran a one-man operation out of a strip mall office, specializing in cheating spouses and insurance fraud. "Need some surveillance work done?" I told him over the phone. "Cheating wife?" "Maybe. Want to be sure before I make any moves." "Smart man. My rate's $200 a day plus expenses." Done. While Carver started his investigation, I decided to do some digging of my own. I went home while Elise was at work and checked our joint credit card statements, hotel charges, restaurant bills for two, a Victoria's Secret purchase from last month that I'd never seen the results of. But the real smoking tool was in her car. I checked the GPS navigation history on her Honda Accord. Over the past 6 months, she'd visited Brent's apartment complex 17 times, always on days when she told me she was working late or having girls' night with her friends. I took pictures of everything, screenshots of the GPS data, photos of the credit card statements, copies of hotel receipts. I was building a case like I was preparing for war, because that's exactly what this was. Carver called me 3 days later with preliminary results. "Your wife's definitely cheating," he said without preamble. "But it gets more interesting." "How so?" "She's not the only one. This Brent character has at least 2 other women on rotation. Saw him with a blonde at the Marriott Tuesday night, brunette at his apartment Thursday afternoon. Your wife showed up Friday evening." I felt something twist in my gut. Not jealousy, something worse. Humiliation. I wasn't just being cheated on. I was being cheated on by an amateur. "Get me everything," I said. "Photos, times, dates. I want a complete picture." "You got it." That weekend, I decided to do some surveillance myself. Ray helped me install a dash cam in my pickup truck and showed me how to use a telephoto lens he'd borrowed from a pawn shop. We parked across from Brent's apartment complex Saturday morning and waited. Elise showed up at 11 a.m., carrying a gym bag and wearing yoga pants that cost more than most people's car payments. She looked around nervously before heading into the building. "There's your confirmation," Ray said. "Yeah." I adjusted the camera lens. "Let's see what else we can learn." We didn't have to wait long. At 2 p.m., a different woman emerged from the building, the blonde Carver had mentioned. She was crying, clutching her purse like it contained her life savings. "Looks like trouble in paradise," Ray observed. 20 minutes later, Brent came out, looking smug and satisfied. He got in his BMW and drove toward the gym. We followed at a distance. The Gold's Gym on Industrial Boulevard was Brent's natural habitat. He strutted through the place like he owned it, nodding at other muscleheads and checking himself out in every mirror he passed. I watched him through the window, noting his routine, his habits, his weaknesses. That's when I got an idea. "Ray," I said, "you still got connections from your old life?" "Depends what you need. Nothing illegal, just creative." Ray grinned. "I like where this is going." That night, while Brent was at the gym, Ray and I paid a visit to the parking garage under his apartment building. Ray had a gift for getting into places he wasn't supposed to be, a skill he'd developed during his criminal years and refined during his rehabilitation. Brent's BMW was parked in space 247, gleaming under the fluorescent lights like a monument to vanity. Ray walked around it slowly, examining the exterior. "Nice car," he said. "Be a shame if something happened to it." "Nothing permanent," I said. "Just inconvenient." Ray nodded and got to work. He loosened the lug nuts on all 4 wheels. Not enough to cause an accident, just enough to make them wobble and create an expensive repair bill. Then he used a small drill to put tiny holes in the exhaust system, ensuring the car would sound like a broken lawnmower. While Ray worked on the car, I focused on Brent's gym bag, which he'd left in the back seat. The doors were unlocked. Apparently, Brent felt pretty secure in his private garage. Inside the bag, I found his shampoo, body wash, and protein powder. I carefully opened the shampoo bottle and added a generous amount of Nair hair removal cream, mixing it thoroughly before closing it back up. "That's diabolical," Ray said, watching me work. "He's so vain about his hair. Figured I'd help him achieve a more natural look." We finished our work and left without being seen. The next phase of my plan was already forming in my mind. Sunday morning, I drove to Murphy's Bar and Grill, the local watering hole where everyone in town eventually showed up. Old Pete Kowalski was holding court at his usual spot at the end of the bar, regaling anyone who'd listen with stories from his 40 years as a mechanic. Pete was a town institution, a 70-year-old Polish immigrant who knew everyone's business and wasn't shy about sharing it. He'd been hanging around my shop since I opened, offering unsolicited advice and keeping me entertained with local gossip. "Nick!" Pete called out when he saw me. "Heard you and the missus are having some troubles." Small towns. You couldn't keep secrets even if you wanted to. "Something like that," I said, ordering a beer. "That's a shame. Elise always seemed like a nice girl." "Yeah, Well, appearances can be deceiving. Pete leaned closer, lowering his voice. You know, I seen her around town with that musclehead from the gym. Brent something. Kincaid. That's the one. They've been meeting up at the Marriott pretty regular-like? I took a sip of my beer. Is that right? Oh yeah, my nephew works valet parking there. Says they come in separate, leave together, real sneaky-like. Interesting. Pete studied my face. You okay, son? You look like you're planning something. Just thinking. Well, whatever you're thinking, make sure it's legal. That Brent character's got connections. His daddy owns half the commercial real estate in town. That was news to me. Rich boy with a safety net. That explained the arrogance. Thanks for the heads up, Pete. I finished my beer and headed home. Elise was there, pacing around the living room like a caged animal. She looked terrible. Dark circles under her eyes, hair unwashed, wearing the same clothes she'd had on yesterday. Nick, thank God, she said when I walked in. We need to talk. Do we? Yes, this whole situation has gotten completely out of hand. I know you're upset about the hospital thing, but you're overreacting. I sat down on the couch and looked at her. Really looked at her. When had she become a stranger? 17 times, I said. What? You've been to Brent's apartment 17 times in the past 6 months. I checked your GPS history. The color drained from her face. Nick, I can explain. I'm sure you can. You always were creative with the truth. It's not what you think. Really? Because I think you're cheating on me with your college boyfriend. Am I wrong? She opened her mouth, then closed it. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. I want a divorce, I said quietly. No. She shook her head frantically. No, Nick, please, we can work this out. We can go to counseling. I'll stop seeing Brent, I promise. Stop seeing him? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Elise, you rushed to the hospital at midnight because he had cosmetic surgery complications. You think this is something we can just work through? I made a mistake. You made a choice. Multiple choices. Over 6 months of choices. She started crying then, big dramatic sobs that might have worked on me 6 months ago. Now they just sounded like noise. Please, Nick, I love you. No, I said, standing up. You love the idea of me, the security, the stability, the nice house, the respectable husband, but you love Brent's abs and his BMW more. That's not true. Prove it right now. Call Brent and tell him you never want to see him again. She hesitated. Just for a second, but it was enough. That's what I thought, I said. I'll be staying at the shop until I can find an apartment. You can have the house until the divorce is final. I headed for the door, but her voice stopped me. You'll regret this, Nick. You're throwing away 8 years of marriage over nothing. I turned back to look at her one last time. 8 years. 17 visits to his apartment. Yeah, you're right. That math definitely works out in your favor. Then I left her standing there, crying in the living room of the house we'd bought together when we still believed in forever. Monday morning brought the first fruits of my weekend labor. Carver called while I was opening the shop, barely containing his laughter. You need to see this, he said. Meet me at the diner on 5th Street. I found him in a corner booth, grinning like a kid on Christmas morning. He slid a manila envelope across the table. Your boy Brent had quite the weekend, Carver said. The photos inside were better than I'd hoped. Brent at the gym, his hair patchy and uneven where the Nair had done its work. Brent in the parking garage, staring at his wobbling BMW in confusion. Brent at the mechanic's shop, arguing with the service manager about his mysteriously damaged exhaust system. Gets better, Carver continued. Turns out the blonde from last week. That's Jessica Chen, a paralegal from downtown. She found out about your wife and the brunette, girl named Amanda Torres who works at the bank. Jessica confronted Brent yesterday at his apartment. Neighbors heard the whole thing. What did she say? Called him a lying, cheating piece of garbage. Threw his gym bag off the balcony, made quite a scene. I studied the photos more carefully. In one shot, Brent was on his hands and knees in the parking lot, collecting scattered protein bars and workout gear. His partially bald head gleamed under the streetlights. This is good, I said, but I need more. What kind of more? I want to know everything about this guy, his job, his finances, his weaknesses. If he's juggling 3 women, he's probably cutting corners somewhere else too. Carver nodded. I'll dig deeper. Might take a few days. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. That afternoon, Elise showed up at the shop. She looked better than she had yesterday. Showered, dressed professionally, makeup carefully applied. She was trying to project strength, but I could see the desperation underneath. "Nick, we need to discuss this rationally," she said, standing in the doorway of my office. Ray looked up from the engine he was working on, wrench in hand. "Want me to handle this, boss?" "It's fine, Ray. This won't take long." Elise stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "I've been thinking about what you said yesterday. And? You're right, I made mistakes. But marriage is about forgiveness, isn't it? About working through problems together?" "Some problems, sure. Cheating for 6 months isn't a problem, Elise. It's a choice." I was confused. Brent and I have history, and when he came back to town, old feelings got stirred up. "But it doesn't mean anything." "Doesn't mean anything." I leaned back in my chair. "You spent our anniversary weekend at the Marriott with him. You bought lingerie with our joint credit card for him. You lied to me every single day for 6 months. But it doesn't mean anything?" Her composure cracked slightly. "How do you know about the hotel?" "I know about everything, Elise. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" "I'll end it with Brent. Today. Right now, if you want." "Too late." "What do you mean, too late?" I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a business card. "I've already filed for divorce. You'll be served papers tomorrow." "You can't be serious." "Dead serious." She stared at the card like it was a death warrant. "I won't make this easy for you." "I didn't expect you to." "I'll fight for half of everything. The house, the business, your savings. I'll take you for everything you're worth." "Good luck with that." I stood up and opened the door. "Now get out of my shop." She left, but not before throwing me a look that promised war. That evening, I met with my lawyer, Sarah Mitchell, a sharp woman in her 50s who specialized in divorce cases. She reviewed the evidence I'd gathered, the GPS data, credit card statements, hotel receipts, Carver's surveillance photos. "This is excellent documentation," she said. "With evidence this clear, she won't have much leverage in the settlement." "What about her threat to go after the business?" "The shop was established before your marriage, and you can prove you built it with your own capital and labor. She might be entitled to some appreciation in value, but she can't touch the core business." "And the house?" "Joint asset, so you'll probably have to split the equity. But given her infidelity, we might be able to negotiate a more favorable arrangement." I felt some of the tension leave my shoulders. "So I'm not going to lose everything?" "Not even close. She's the one who should be worried." The next morning, Ray arrived at the shop with interesting news. "Remember how you wanted to know more about Brent's situation?" "Yeah." "Turns out my cousin works IT at Morrison Financial, where Brent's got his day job. Says the guy's been using company equipment for some kind of side business. Cryptocurrency mining or something." "That's against company policy, I'm guessing." "Big time. They've been trying to figure out why their network's been running slow. If someone happened to tip them off about what's causing it." I smiled. "That would be unfortunate for Brent." "Real unfortunate." "Your cousin have any way of documenting this?" "He might, for the right price. Make it happen." While Ray worked his connections, I decided to pay a visit to Murphy's Bar. It was happy hour, and the place was packed with the usual crowd of construction workers, office drones, and retirees. Perfect for spreading some carefully selected information. I found Pete at his usual spot, already 3 beers deep and holding court with a group of younger guys from the construction crew. "Nick," Pete called out. "How you holding up, son?" "Better every day," I said, ordering a beer. "Turns out divorce might be the best thing that ever happened to me." "That's so?" "Yeah. Found out some interesting things about my wife's boyfriend. Guy's a real piece of work." The construction guys perked up. Nothing they liked better than gossip about rich people behaving badly. "What kind of things?" asked Tommy Brennan, a roofer I'd done some work for. "Well, turns out he's not just cheating on his girlfriend with my wife. He's got at least 3 women on the hook. Real classy operation he's running." "No kidding?" "Gets better. Guy's so vain he had hair transplant surgery and botched it. Now he looks like he stuck his finger in an electrical socket." The group erupted in laughter. I pulled out my phone and showed them one of Carver's photos. Brent at the gym with his patchy, uneven hairline. "Jesus," Tommy said. "What happened to him?" "Bad reaction to the procedure, I heard. Might be permanent." The photo got passed around the group, generating more laughter and commentary. By the time I left the bar an hour later, I knew the story would be all over town by morning. Sure enough, my phone started buzzing with calls and texts from people who'd heard various versions of the tale. The details got more elaborate with each retelling. By noon, the story had evolved into Brent being caught in bed with two women simultaneously while his hair fell out in clumps. Small towns were beautiful things when they worked in your favor. That afternoon, Elise called, furious. "What did you do to Brent?" "I have no idea what you're talking about." "His hair! Someone sabotaged his shampoo!" "That's terrible, really tragic. Guy's already not much to look at." "This isn't funny, Nick. And now people are spreading rumors about him all over town." "Rumors? What kind of rumors?" "You know exactly what kind. About him cheating, about his appearance, about everything." "Well," I said, "if they're just rumors, I'm sure he has nothing to worry about." She hung up on me. An hour later, Brent himself showed up at the shop. He looked even worse in person than in the photos. His hair was patchy and uneven, with bald spots scattered across his scalp like a diseased lawn. He'd tried to cover it with a baseball cap, but the damage was still visible. "We need to talk," he said, trying to project authority despite looking like a cancer patient. Ray stepped up beside me, wiping his hands on a rag. "Everything okay, boss?" "Fine, Ray. Mr. Kincaid was just leaving." "I'm not going anywhere until we settle this," Brent said. "Settle what?" "You know what you did? The car, the hair, the rumors, this ends now." I looked him up and down slowly. "You know what, Brent? You're absolutely right. This does end now." "Good. I'm glad we understand each other." "Oh, we do. See, I've been thinking about this whole situation and I realized something important." "What's that?" "You're not worth the effort." Brent blinked, confused. "What?" "You heard me. You're a pathetic middle-aged man-child who has to juggle multiple women because no single woman can stand you for very long. You're not my competition, Brent. You're my wife's punishment." His face flushed red. "You son of a—" "Careful," Ray said, stepping forward. "This is private property." Brent looked at Ray, then back at me. For a moment, I thought he might actually try something stupid. Instead, he turned and walked away, muttering threats under his breath. "That guy's going to be trouble," Ray observed. "Let him come," I said. "I'm just getting started." The next week brought a cascade of beautiful disasters for Team Adultery. Carver's investigation had uncovered a treasure trove of information about Brent's business dealings, and Ray's cousin had delivered detailed documentation of the cryptocurrency mining operation Brent was running on company equipment. I made an anonymous call to Morrison Financial's IT security department, providing them with specific details about the unauthorized mining operation, including server logs and power consumption data. They moved fast. By Thursday afternoon, Brent was called into a meeting with HR and escorted out of the building with his personal belongings in a cardboard box. The story spread through the local business community like wildfire. Brent Kincaid, the hotshot IT manager fired for stealing company resources to mine Bitcoin. His professional reputation was destroyed overnight. But the real masterpiece came courtesy of Jessica Chen, the paralegal who'd discovered Brent's three-timing operation. Apparently, she'd been busy doing her own investigation and had connected with Amanda Torres, the bank employee who was also dating Brent. Together, they'd compiled a comprehensive dossier of his lies, manipulations, and infidelities. Jessica, being a paralegal with access to legal resources and a vindictive streak, had created a detailed timeline of Brent's activities and shared it on social media. The post went viral locally, complete with photos, receipts, and screenshots of his dating app conversations with multiple women. The post was a work of art. Jessica had documented every lie Brent had told, every promise he'd broken, every woman he'd deceived. She'd even included financial records showing how he'd been using different women to pay for his lifestyle: dinners, hotel rooms, gym memberships, even his rent. Elise's name featured prominently in the timeline, along with photos of her entering and leaving Brent's apartment. The post made it clear that she wasn't just another victim. She was a willing participant who'd helped him deceive other women while deceiving her own husband. The reaction was swift and brutal. Elise's social media accounts were flooded with comments from friends, coworkers, and acquaintances expressing shock and disappointment. Her carefully curated image as a successful marketing executive and devoted wife crumbled in real time. Her boss called her into a meeting Friday morning to discuss concerns about her judgment and professionalism. While adultery wasn't technically grounds for termination, the public nature of the scandal and its impact on the company's reputation made her position untenable. By Friday afternoon, she was cleaning out her desk. Meanwhile, Brent's situation continued to deteriorate. Without his IT job, he couldn't afford his expensive apartment. His BMW was repossessed when he missed 2 payments. The other women he'd been stringing along had all cut contact, leaving him isolated and broke. The patchy hair situation had gotten worse, not better. Whatever reaction he'd had to the Nair had caused permanent damage to his follicles. He'd tried to fix it with more surgery, but that had only made things worse. Now he looked like he'd been attacked by a weed trimmer. Saturday evening, I was at Murphy's bar celebrating my freedom with Ray and Pete when Elise walked in. The entire place went quiet. She'd become local entertainment, and everyone wanted to see what she'd do next. She spotted me at the bar and walked over, her heels clicking on the wooden floor like a countdown timer. She looked haggard despite her expensive clothes and professional makeup. The stress was eating her alive. "Nick," she said, trying to sound casual, "can we talk privately?" "I don't think we have anything private to discuss anymore," I said loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "Your business is pretty much public knowledge now." A few people chuckled. Elise's face flushed red. "Please," she said quietly. 5 minutes. I looked around the bar at all the faces watching us like we were primetime television. "Sure. Talk." "Not here." "Here's fine. These are my friends. They've heard all about you already." She glanced around nervously, realizing she was trapped. "I lost my job." "I heard. Shame about that." "They said it was due to reputation concerns." "That's not legal, Nick. I could sue them." "You could try. Might be hard to prove discrimination when there's photographic evidence of you helping your boyfriend defraud other women." "I never defrauded anyone." "Really? So you told Jessica and Amanda about each other? You let them know they were sharing Brent with you and your husband's credit card?" The bar had gone completely silent now. Everyone was listening to our conversation like it was a radio drama. "That's different," she said weakly. "How?" It's complicated." "No, it's really not. You helped a con artist run multiple scams on different women while stealing money from your husband to fund it. That's not complicated. That's just criminal." "I want to work this out, Nick. We can go to counseling, start over somewhere else." I looked at her for a long moment, studying her face. She was still beautiful, still charming when she wanted to be. But I could see the desperation underneath now, the calculation behind every word. "You know what the funny thing is, Elise? I actually might have forgiven you if you'd just been honest about it." "I can be honest now." "Too late. See, I know about the other stuff too." Her face went pale. "What other stuff?" "The credit cards you opened in my name. The money you transferred from our joint savings to your personal account. The loan you took against the house without telling me." She opened her mouth, then closed it. The bar was so quiet you could hear the ice maker cycling in the kitchen. "I was going to leave you anyway," she whispered. "I just needed time to get my finances in order." And there it was. The truth, finally. She hadn't been confused or conflicted. She'd been planning her exit strategy for months, using Brent as her escape route while systematically looting our joint assets. "I know," I said. "My lawyer found all of it. The hidden accounts, the forged signatures, the fraudulent loan applications. You're not just a cheater, Elise. You're a thief." The color drained completely from her face now. "Nick, please. The best part, all of that financial fraud you committed, that's going to make the divorce real simple. See, when one spouse commits felony theft against the other, they forfeit their claim to joint assets. You can't prove. Actually, I can. Bank records, signature analysis, digital forensics. My lawyer has everything." She stood there for a moment, swaying slightly, looking like she might faint. Then she turned and walked out of the bar without another word. The place erupted in conversation as soon as the door closed behind her. I finished my beer and headed home to my new apartment, feeling lighter than I had in months. Monday morning brought the final piece of the puzzle. Carver called with news that Brent had been arrested for check fraud. Apparently, he'd been writing bad checks to cover his expenses since losing his job. One of them had been to his landlord, who'd pressed charges. "Guy's looking at 6 months minimum," Carver said. "Probably more if they dig into his other activities." "What about Elise?" "Your lawyer filed the fraud charges this morning. She'll be arrested by end of business today." I hung up and looked around my shop. My profitable, debt-free, wholly owned business that Elise would never be able to touch. Ray was under the hood of a Chevy, humming along to the radio. Pete was in his usual corner, reading the newspaper and offering commentary to anyone who'd listen. This was my world, my real world, and it was exactly where I belonged. That evening, I got a call from Sarah Mitchell, my lawyer. "It's over," she said. Elise signed the settlement agreement. She gets nothing except her personal belongings and whatever's left in her personal accounts after she pays her legal fees. What about criminal charges? She's pleading guilty to theft and fraud, probably looking at probation and restitution, but no jail time if she cooperates fully. And Brent? Not my case, but I heard he took a plea deal. 6 months in county, 3 years probation. I hung up and sat in my apartment, looking out at the town I'd called home for 15 years. Tomorrow, Elise would be gone, moving back to her parents' house in another state, starting over with nothing but debt and a criminal record. Brent would be in jail, his career destroyed, his reputation ruined, his vanity permanently damaged by his patchy, scarred scalp. And I would be here, surrounded by friends who'd stood by me, running a business I'd built with my own hands, free from the weight of a marriage that had been dead longer than I'd wanted to admit. The phone rang. It was Ray. "Boss, you want to come down to Murphy's? Pete's buying rounds for everyone. Says we're celebrating your independence." I smiled. "I'll be right there." I walked into Murphy's bar to find half the town waiting for me. Pete raised his glass as I entered. "To Nick Harlan," he called out. "A man who knows how to handle his business." The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. I looked around at all these faces, mechanics and construction workers, shop owners and retirees, people who worked hard and played fair and didn't have patience for liars and cheaters. My people, my real family. I raised my beer and smiled. "To justice served cold." The crowd roared its approval. In the corner, someone had started a dartboard game using a printed photo of Brent's patchy head as the target. The whole bar was laughing, drinking, and celebrating the downfall of two people who thought they were smarter than everyone else. As I stood there, surrounded by genuine friends, watching my cheating ex-wife's lover's mugshot pinned to the dartboard, I realized something profound. Revenge wasn't just about punishment. It was about restoration. It was about setting the world right again. And tonight, in this bar, in this town, in this moment, the world was exactly as it should be.